What's the price going to be in 3 months?
3 months. Which one?
PulseChain.
PulseChain might get over base sack rate. We might be up at like 3 zeros and a 1 by middle of next year. It's really got to take off though. Yeah, no, I think that on this last nice move on PulseChain, it was like a pretty nice clean parabola. I don't know who watches the chart every day and who doesn't, but it got stopped short right where the breakdown happened on the SEC FUD event, right? So this is just a slight sideways period, and we've had a lot of stuff coming together all at the same time. We had the highest of stakes movie launched. This new communist thing that's been popping up, that's a whole other level of supplemental for Hex. What else has been going on? Liquid loans just launched, which maybe that'd be a good thing to talk about. I think we're moving toward a period in history when if your coin doesn't utilize some sort of strategy with like a over collateralized vault, like with liquid loans, like you're going to be your coin's not going to succeed as well. Every coin going forward is going to need a buy and burn of some kind. Yeah.
Would you explain to everybody why that lending feature does what it does to the pricing?
Yeah. So let's break it down. So if you wanted to create more value on the network without bringing new capital across the bridge from Ethereum or new dollars in, the way you do that is, well, there's already a price established on Pulse. We all agree that, right? Well, if you could take a portion of your Pulse and lock it up, and then you get through a decentralized contract, it'll issue you some stable coins. Well, now you've virtually created dollars out of thin air. Because it's the same thing that you do in like the real estate market. When you get equity on a home, if the home's worth X amount of value, you can borrow up to X amount of value of that home. So it's the same thing with PulseChain. If you lock up a lot of Pulse, well then you can borrow some stable coins at like maybe 10% of the total amount in the vault. And you can go buy more Pulse with that stable coin that you just borrowed, put that back in the vault, and then it creates this centrifugal loop of momentum where more and more Pulse supply is getting locked up, which means that's less than gets sold in the market, which creates this like positive price loop. And so what's going to happen is a lot of these big wallets, they sitting on like 10 billion, 20 billion, 100 billion Pulse, they're going to lock up a lot of that supply. And then they're going to put it in a vault and borrow stable coins, and they'll never have to sell their Pulse. They'll just borrow stable coins from this decentralized contract that issues them based on the value of the amount in the vault. And so if you get enough people doing this, it's going to lock up so much supply that it's going to create this like liquidity loop where there's more and more virtual dollars being created on the value of something that existed before. And then every time that pushes the price of Pulse up, everyone can borrow a little bit more. And then they can buy more Pulse with it. And so less and less supply is on the market and more stable coins are on the market. And then the reverse of that is if someone really big comes in and sells hard, you better hope that you have enough collateral backing your loan, right? So there will be downsides, but when Liquidity launched on Ethereum back a few years ago, the price of Ethereum doubled from like $2,200 to almost $4,000. And so in our world, because the price is so low and it's such a new asset, they could probably do 10x what Ethereum did at a minimum, if enough people gravitate toward that. And so there's these other guys like the Haunted strategy, or like the, what's her name? Hot Pearl does the strategy. Everyone's got different strategies on how to utilize these different functions of this contract. But this contract was something that $50 million. People had enough faith, they put $50 million of value into this thing, and it didn't launch for 2 years. And they showed up with something that I think is going to bring a lot of value to the ecosystem. So you can find that stuff on some of their channels, like the Up and UpX channel has a lot of that. The Liquid Loans Telegram channel probably has a lot of that too. So you know what you're getting yourself into. But I would recommend, if you were going to take some Pulse, lock it up in a vault, but only borrow like 10% of what you got in there. Because you let everyone, right now the global number, I just checked yesterday, was like 220%. So people are being pretty risky. They're taking half of that and borrowing on it. So it's like, well, if the price drops 60%, you're going to lose your Pulse unless you can come back and pay the loan on the spot. So the best strategy is to put in like 1,000% and borrow 100% of that 1,000%. So it's like, it has to drop 90% before you're in trouble. And so, that's some of the stuff we do at axisALiVE.com is like we look at all the different things being built on PulseChain and then figuring out strategic angles on how to utilize them for the best return. Frodo.
I think you're not necessarily, I haven't done that yet, but I think you're not necessarily in big
Well,
trouble because
they waited to launch it until we were on the cruise because they didn't want RG stealing all the vaults.
Oh, yeah.
well, you're gonna get your money. I mean, the money anyway, right? Just but the mostly is you lose 10%.
Well, it depends on your strategy. You have to put a lot
Yeah,
up and then
yeah,
borrow
yeah,
very little
yeah.
to start, and then the price rises, then you can borrow a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to keep feeding the vault with more pulse. So you're actually borrowing stable coins at a lower price, and then you're buying pulse at a higher price. So it's like leveraging what you already had to get more of it, and you're good in so long as the price doesn't drop hard enough that you get liquidated on that vault. Hope that makes sense. Yes, sir.
How does validator liquid staking complement that?
Well, these guys will know, right?
Set it up.
Well, because then isn't that basically the same as like you're earning money on staked PulseChain, correct? And that's liquid, so then you can use that in the vault. So kind of you're earning on two streams at once, right? So, yeah, I just figured that out. So
Earnings on your earn.
yeah, so, and that's the funny thing about money in general and how it is in the real world too, is the guys that are the richest are like compounding revenue sources through real estate or through stock options and getting dividends and then collateralizing something there. Like usually the wealthiest people, they don't really hold cash, they're just stacking all these assets and having them all pay them at the same time. So definitely looking forward to seeing where that goes.
You do have a chart up behind you.
Oh, nice. I think that looks familiar. I think I might have made that one. Yeah, I mean, this is on the bottom there, you got the Ethereum chart in the very beginning. And it kind of does look the same. We get the same dip here as we did back here. And this is the level I want us to see hold the support. And I think if that does happen, and going into Q1, let's say maybe by February, we'll probably see a repeat like what we saw in Hex this year. Because it's a new year, it's a fresh start, and the biggest moves on Hex always happens. I know this is a PulseChain chart, but they're synonymous. Hex is going to push up Pulse with it and vice versa. Because they're so binded together by their millions and millions of dollars of liquidity. But yeah, I would like to see something like this, you know, into Q1. April has always been the biggest moves. Godwill came in April of 2020, and then the following, let's see, what was the following year? Oh yeah, we broke out and went to like 5 to 10 cents. PulseChain SEC got announced. And then this last year, 2022, it's almost 2024. 2022, that's when the big crash happened on Hex. Remember, we were at like 17, 18 cents, and then everyone jumped ship and pushed it down to like 3 cents in a couple of weeks. So big moves either way. So make sure you're positioned for either scenario, but I think with like liquid loans launching and you got all these other fundamentals coming online that we could be seeing upside. So pretty excited for that. Jason? Marlon?
PX versus EX?
Oh, good topic. Who in here likes both of the hexes? Raise your hand. All right, so over half, probably 70% of us. Yeah, I mean, so we talked a little bit last night about this, and I'm really vocal about EHEX being like the biggest and best play for this cycle, above and beyond PulseChain, because think of it this way: if EHEX is the cheapest and everyone that didn't want it already capitulated back the other way, that they're set, they're not coming back, they don't have anything left to sell on the ETH side, so that kind of like releases a lot of the pressure from overhead. And it's already cheaper, and they're both doing the same thing, they're both yielding about the same rate. So if you stake the same amount of hex on both PulseChain or Ethereum, they're gonna do the same thing, it's just gonna cost a little more gas on one side. So that kind of like puts the EHEX into like a whales only type of game right now. Whereas like PHEX is for the shorter stakes and like it's where a lot of the activity will go to. But at the end of the day, I see in this situation where like the Ethereum hex is the closest to like the most value right now. And I think it's I don't think it's really that serious. Like I think people should be holding a little bit of both.
What about the bankend size?
Not a concern. I mean, if they wanted to dump all 700 million EHEX that they got, I mean, so what, it gives us more time to DCA while they're doing that. And then once that pressure belt releases, this happened with Bitcoin back in 2014. They called it the Bitcoin bear well, because he was dumping tens of thousands of Bitcoin and he suppressed the price down there, like between 250 and 160 for months. And then they called it the slaying of the bear well, because all the community got together and bought up the last of his coins and then sent it. So it'd be the same thing on this. And if Ethereum comes out with an upgrade where they lower gas fees, that's going to be such a contrarian move that nobody saw coming, just like nobody saw that ETH2 would come out before PulseChain. Like we don't always have all the answers, but we can kind of see the path, you know. So I wouldn't throw shade on that one. I buy a little bit of everything. The cool 4 core assets for RH stuff.
What about ETH?
ETH? I think ETH is pretty boring. Oh, Ink? Ink's a piece of crap. No, I'm kidding. So I used to think that Ink could go to like thousands of dollars a coin. And the only way that that's doing that is like, end of this cycle or the next year is like a contrarian play. I think Ink up till now has acted as nothing more than just some pressure for everything else. People have just been nuking that stuff for free, and it's actually holding us down right now. So, and because it's a fixed rate, it's going to take like 2 to 3 years for all that supply to get accumulated in a few strong hands, and then the relative new supply coming out will be small enough that hopefully the market demand and the market has grown to the point where it can be absorbed, and then it'll come up in value a little bit more. But $10 Ink would probably be like where I see it going, and that might be it.
You want to touch on Com at all?
Okay, yeah, so Communist, there's this new secret weapon strategy developed by Johnny Sachs. And if you have hex stakes, you can actually you can claim this free token called Communist on both chains. And long story short, the people that are getting the most Com are the ones that are staked far, far out. So a guy that stakes for a year, let's say he gets 1x the Com that he's supposed to get, and a guy that stakes for 15 years gets 50 times the amount of Com. But only 25% of the Com that a stake gets is accessible to them now, the day that they make the stake. And the remaining 75% has to be gotten at the end of the stake. So what it does is it creates this like supply shock where there's not enough supply. And you can literally buy hundreds of trillions of them right now for just a couple grand. So if enough people get flushed out and don't want it, or have forgotten about it, or don't know about it, then that kind of puts us in a situation where like a few smart guys can accumulate it all. And that's what we've kind of seen on the Pulse side. Is that there's like, to be in the top 2 pages, you need like 100 trillion, but there's only 80 quadrillion. So that's a factor of, one guy holds 12 quadrillion. So if you want to be on page 1, you can have 1/80th of the supply. And so that's like what, like 10 grand, 10 to 15 grand. And I mean, it's out of reach for some people, but for others, if you see that you could multiply your Pulse or your hex stack based on getting in a Com down here, where the supply shortage issue is going to happen, then you can actually compound and come back out with more of the other stuff later.
I'm just curious, what's your take on adoption? Where do you think the primary adoption for both Hex and Pulse, the Richard Hart universe, is going to come from? Do you think it's coming from out of crypto, people that are just new and like meet people like us, or do you think that there's room for the rest of the crypto community that's kind of dissed us for all this time? I'm just curious.
I think on the EHEX side, you could get OG Ethereans to come in to get gains once things get moving, right? And that's a different thing than what I'm going to say about PulseChain, which is that same thing could be true where they're going to bridge funds in to get exposure to Pulse, but really, it's going to be networking events like this that's going to get new people in for the first time. They're going to have their experiences, and then they're going to be able to tell people by word of mouth the things that they liked about being involved. And then, I think that on the Pulse side, it's going to be a little more organic that way. And it's on us to really push the message and have the right messaging and be optimistic and understand where we're at, because a lot of people that have just got in the last year have only seen downside on some of this stuff, and so they don't really see where it can go. Also, they don't know that like some of the biggest wallets on PulseChain have made a killing this year. Like even though the price is down, people have gotten rich on it. From ink farming, from selling at the highs, from liquid loans. Like this is going to be another element there. So there's going to be so many options there that have already been making money for people, even though the chart looks down. And I think the game's evolving and it's getting more complex, but it's on us to teach people. So I think what it ends up really boiling down to is people are gonna only learn this stuff on how to use a DeFi wallet when they're forced to. And when they're forced to is when they're getting left behind. Like people become quick learners when they're getting left behind and they're missing out. That fear of missing out is very real in driving someone to learn about this stuff. So yeah, I think it just takes some organic reach and everyone does their part. I met a dude in a hot tub today. Me and Jason were sitting there, he came and started talking about Bitcoin, and I'm like, is this guy like a fed or something? He wants to try to figure out all my secrets. And he had his kid there too, so it was like the perfect little attack round. Like, hey, little guy, give me all your social security number. But it seems like everybody's got like a relative or a kid in their life that is exposed to crypto, but they're not. And so I think that next wave is going to be from the people that know, teaching the people around them, family-wise, or you always get the Thanksgiving conversation, oh, how's your crypto doing? And then the neighborhood is doing really good, like, they don't want to say shit, it's up. So funny.
So I know a lot of people that sacrifice for PulseX, miss PulseChain sacrifice, and now we see that PulseX is way further away from stack rate and PulseChain. Do you think at any point they will reach some kind of parity as far as getting back to stack?
How much time do you got? Because, yeah, there'll probably be a point in the cycle where PulseX does really overperform and give people a second chance to ratio trade back out. The Pulse and PulseX trade is kind of similar to the EHEX and PHEX trade. And you're right, because there was 3 times as many people that sacrificed for PulseX, and there's some here today, that they were missing out on the other 3 elements. So they needed to get rid of the one to get the other 3, because it was their first exposure. And 2 cycles from now, I think PulseX is going to outperform Pulse, because it's deflationary. It's got just a different demand dynamic, and when things get really bullish and there's lots of transactions happening on PulseChain, it becomes deflationary as well. But when the bear market activity drops really low, and so then it becomes inflationary again. So during that second bear market cycle, past this bull, that's going to be PulseX's time to shine on that next run up. So going into like the end of the decade or early, so like when I'm looking at the markets, I'm looking like 10 to 15 years forward, like, and just trying to position. So right now, I don't hold PulseX because it's not its time yet, but it will be. You know, I'm a huge Hex and Pulse guy right now. And I thought PulseChain was the worst idea ever. You're gonna go compete against Ethereum, are you serious, Richard? What's wrong with you? But then, you know, you get a bag of it and then you start transacting on it and see the speed and what it's gonna do for people. Like you could basically, I remember saying this last night at the bar, my original thinking was like Ethereum's on top and PulseChain and all the other layer 1s are like laterally below it. But now I'm actually seeing a reality where ETH and Pulse are like on the same level, and there's like this cohesion there where transactions can occur and cool contracts can be built on Pulse, and then ETH just becomes like the old dog like value proposition. Like that's just where the money's going to sit for now. But all the things should be built on the PulseChain because it's so much cheaper, more affordable, and it's faster blocks. And we have the best community. Like I'm surprised somebody hasn't stepped in and they put 10,000 ETH into our ecosystem and just became their own like legendary investor in the space, because the first guy that does that is gonna make all the hexagons elated. They're gonna go market it 10x more. It's like it's so ripe right now for a big move. So.
How would you onboard a no coiner right now?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways, people have given up on that, right? Because it's very challenging to get people to come into cryptocurrency as it is, but PulseChain had this whole other layer of complexity. But it's just one of those hurdles that if you get enough people to understand it, like the hive mind of the earth gets smarter and then it learns how to do it quicker. When the green candles start to print is going to be your best chance at getting people that are going to come knocking on your door and asking. In March, when Hex was at 12 cents, people were banging down the door trying to get in. So I think it's just got to be one of those things where if they're not listening, you're trying to reach people and they're not listening, dude, you don't have to push it. Just find the next one that will, and eventually they'll come on later. So.
And I mean like technologically too. Like I know we have Coast now. Like,
Hex Scout?
Hex Scout, right? Like have you messed around with Hex Scout?
Yeah, I looked at it a little bit. I'm actually going to do a demo when I get back on my channel with those guys. So, because yeah, they're looking at things in interesting ways. Like there's on the tutorial about how to stake Hex, it asks you how old are you and how old do you want to be when the stake ends. Reframing it from, do you want to stake your coins for 36, 50 days, or do you want to stake them for 5 days? It gives people something they can relate to. You know, people are usually trying to make it to the next month. Regular people, that this could really help impact their lives. And it's definitely an uphill battle, but I'm optimistic more than ever on PulseChain.
What courses are offered at axisALiVE.com?
Well, I think the big one's going to be the TA course, right? Coming up. It's been working on this since May. Fetz was my first sign up on the website, so he's been a great help to me. I really appreciate him. He told me to get a new mic, and then viewership started going up. So he must have something. I didn't get the business suit yet, but maybe that's coming. What was it?
Courses offered.
Oh yeah. So we did the LP bootcamp twice this year, and that was pretty successful. We had like 50 to 60 signups the first time, and like over 100 signups. Over 100 the first time, like 50 to 60 the second time. And I had a lot of help from Candace. She helped build the website and helped run the admin side when we were doing courses too. So thanks to her. I think most people in here want to know more about technical stuff, maybe, or maybe they don't need to, because a lot of us are already pretty well positioned. And I mean, you'll get enough information through my online talk broadcast when it's time to start taking profits and stuff. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for, but right now I just got the TA, which is going to combine just regular charting analysis, kind of like comparing what's going on with crypto to the global market, because a lot of times what's going on with, like, the dollar will affect crypto, or what's going on with stocks will affect crypto. Sometimes they run together, sometimes they run against each other, but knowing when those times are and what they mean is key. So that's part of it, and then understanding how to read the chain if you want extra edge, so you can actually see whose wallet is doing what on the chain. That can give you an extra edge, and then the LP obviously is probably the X factor element to this whole equation. Alrighty, thanks guys.